More than 30 million wild boars have spread fear among farmers worldwide. They don't just devastate vast agricultural regions in the United States, they've expanded all the way to Australia, across the Pacific Ocean. Carrying diseases and causing extreme destruction, wild boars can turn millions of hectares of farmland into wasteland overnight, leaving even American farmers powerless. But Australians refuse to accept defeat. Did they choose to confront these aggressive animals head-on? No. Instead, a quieter, more calculated approach took shape. Subtle, patient, and highly effective. Massive structures were built, waiting for the perfect moment, until the destroyers realized there was no way out. From there, wild boars were gradually transformed into a valuable food product exported around the world. So what's the secret behind the ingenious traps created by Australian farmers? Join Mandarin Tech as we reveal the story. Few people realize that wild boars are not native to either the United States or Australia. They were brought by humans during sea voyages hundreds of years ago, originally as a mobile food supply. Over time, some animals escaped into the wild, and their populations grew far beyond control. In the United States, wild boars are now found in 39 states, with their numbers exceeding 8.3 million as of 2023. In Australia, the situation is even more severe. Wild boars have spread across nearly 45% of the country, reaching far beyond farmland into protected wildlife reserves. This population explosion has come at an enormous cost. Australian farmers lose an estimated $16 million each year, while in the U.S., damages are believed to reach $2.5 billion annually. But the impact goes far beyond money. Wild boars destroy infrastructure, prey on native species, and disrupt entire ecosystems. In Australia alone, they are believed to threaten 148 endangered plant and animal species. As the boundary between wilderness and human land continues to blur, conflict becomes inevitable, and in some cases, humans themselves become the next victims. The epicenter of Australia's wild boar crisis lies in Queensland, often described as the Texas of Australia because of the scale of destruction. According to environmental authorities, more than 3 million wild boars are currently living in the state, densely concentrated in sugarcane fields, rice farms, and livestock regions. Each year, Queensland alone records losses of up to $30 million, most of it caused by damage that happens under the cover of night. Some farms report that 30 to 40% of their cultivated land has been destroyed after boars repeatedly return to the same areas. One farmer in the Burdekin region documented a herd of more than 200 wild boars overrunning his sugarcane fields during a single rainy night, leaving behind craters up to 50 centimeters deep. The damage was so severe that the land could not be replanted without costly rehabilitation. What makes the situation even worse is that after being driven away, the boars do not disappear. They simply retreat temporarily, then return along the same routes right at harvest time. The moment many Australians truly grasped the scale of the crisis, however, came in New South Wales. In 2019, after a prolonged drought, rice farms in the Murray-Darling Basin began reporting something unusual. Wild boars were appearing in broad daylight. A farmer in the Riverina region recalled discovering more than 150 boars tearing through levees just hours after water was released into the fields. Within 48 hours, losses reached $500,000, not because of lost crops, but because the entire system of embankments and irrigation channels had been completely destroyed. It was from these torn-apart fields that Australians were forced to acknowledge a harsh reality. This was no longer a localized nuisance, but a full-scale battle against one of the most intelligent invasive species on the planet. The damage wild boars cause on the ground is already severe. But what governments fear most is the invisible threat they carry: disease. Experts warn that if foot and mouth disease were to enter and spread through Australia's massive wild boar population, the economic damage could reach $50 billion within just 10 years, a scenario capable of crippling the nation's agriculture and livestock industries. That threat has forced both the U.S. and Australian governments to act, encouraging farmers and hunters to take part directly in controlling this invasive species. Research shows that to slow their near exponential reproduction, at least 70% of the population must be removed every year. But instead of simply killing the animals and walking away, another approach began to take shape, turning the surplus wild boar meat into a resource. Operating outside strict government control, wild boar meat is funneled into African markets, where demand for protein is high, supply is limited, and affordability is critical. For many rural communities, this model generates tens of millions of dollars annually, helping offset crop losses and transforming an ecological disaster into an unexpected source of income. To turn a threat into an asset, Australian farmers must first win a critical game of strategy. Before any trap is ever set, they have to read the invisible map wild boars leave behind on the ground. These animals rarely move at random. They tend to follow low-lying areas, dry creek beds, seasonal wetlands, and the edges of dense bushland, places that offer water, food, and a safe escape route. Their presence is easy to spot. Large, wet footprints pressed into the soil, and deep, torn-up furrows that look as if heavy machinery has passed through. This is not yet the moment to set a trap. It is the moment to build trust. Baiting is an art form, a silent introduction between humans and one of the most intelligent invasive species on the planet. As natural omnivores, wild boars are drawn to many kinds of food: dry corn, fermented corn, leftover vegetables, and strong, sweet scents like molasses. The sharp smell of fermented corn carries through the night air, becoming an irresistible invitation for roaming herds. Hidden around the site, infrared cameras quietly record every movement and stream live footage to the trapper's phone. Over the course of 7 to 10 nights, the boars return again and again, forming a routine and slowly losing their natural caution. But one rule can never be broken: the bait must always be there. If the food disappears for even a single night, all trust collapses. And when that happens, the boars vanish, taking with them days of patience and careful planning. Once the herd has fully grown accustomed to the bait site, the game truly enters its decisive phase. Only then does the trap begin to take shape, not abruptly but gradually, appearing as if it were a natural part of the landscape. The most commonly used design is the circular corral trap, with a diameter of up to 10 to 12 meters and walls over 1.5 meters high, large enough to enclose an entire herd of dozens of animals in a single capture. Heavy steel panels are anchored deep into the ground to withstand violent impacts, while the gate is remotely controlled and triggered only when most of the herd has moved inside. The entire structure is carefully camouflaged with branches, soil, and dry leaves, blending seamlessly into the surrounding environment, quietly waiting for the perfect moment. If you think the battle to reclaim the fields ends the moment the trapdoor slams shut, that's the very mistake many people have made and paid for. In reality, the instant the gate closes is only the starting line of an entirely new race, where every minute and every decision can mean success or failure. Once trapped, feral hogs immediately panic. They slam into the walls, squeal, and release alarm calls that can carry hundreds of meters through the night. Just one sound escaping the enclosure is enough to alert other herds in the area, causing them to change routes, feeding times, or abandon the zone altogether for weeks. That's why speed and silence become absolutely critical. The response team must approach the trap in complete silence, usually within 1 to 2 hours after the gate drops. Large barrier screens are set up to block sight lines and dampen noise. Every action is deliberate and precise, using specialized equipment to end the process quickly and minimize stress. On the remaining animals, there is no room for hesitation. Afterward, the carcasses are quickly inspected, assessed, and loaded onto specialized trucks with high sides and sliding floors, ready to leave the forest as fast as possible. With feral hogs, creatures driven by instinct and resistance, every step is a mental chess match. One small mistake can undo weeks of careful control. For those who have fought this battle for years, the truth is clear. This is not simply capture or eradication. It is the art of managing the wild, where discipline, precision, and restraint must always come before instinct. Why are wild boars increasingly attacking humans? The answer isn't aggression. It begins with the place they once called home. Pristine forests, the natural territory of wild boars, are shrinking day by day, not because of natural disasters, but because of human activity. Every year, millions of hectares of forest are cleared to expand farmland, build highways, residential areas, and mining sites. Massive machines roar through the landscape, tearing apart ecosystems and leaving behind bare red soil and scorched, lifeless gaps. In places like Texas and Florida, swamp forests that once served as ideal labyrinths for wild boars to hide and survive have been flattened, replaced by resorts and new urban developments. At the same time, severe wildfires burning through entire summers have destroyed what little remained, turning green forests into ash and silence. When forests no longer provide cover, when the ground offers no roots to dig, no wild fruit, no insects hidden in moist soil, wild boars lose not only shelter, but their food supply. Survival instincts force them to cross old boundaries, slipping past village edges, breaching fences, and moving into the fertile fields cultivated by humans. Not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. After the hunt comes a completely different journey: processing. Wild boars are taken straight to the receiving facility, where every step must be fast, efficient, and precise to preserve the full value of the meat. Upon entering the plant, the carcasses pass through a high-pressure washing system where powerful jets remove mud, blood, and debris from the skin. This cleaning step is not just about hygiene, but about stopping bacterial growth from the very beginning. The meat is then moved into a rapid chilling room, kept at around 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, allowing the core temperature to drop quickly while preserving freshness, color, and texture before it moves on to sorting and further processing. Once the carcass has reached a stable temperature, the breakdown process begins, a stage where skill and speed determine the final quality. On the overhead rail system, each carcass is securely fixed to ensure clean, accurate, and safe cuts. The butcher methodically separates the shoulder, hind leg, ribs, and loin along natural joints, carefully avoiding damage to the muscle fibers to preserve the meat's structure. Sharp knives and steady hands are essential. Every cut is deliberate, firm enough to separate each section, yet precise enough to prevent tissue damage. After the main sections are removed, the meat is transferred to the cutting tables for further portioning based on end use. Lean cuts are set aside for quick processing, fat is separated for sausage production or rendering, while tendons and bones are collected for secondary products. Each piece is inspected for color, firmness, and smell. With anything below standard removed immediately, the process ends with fine trimming, where skilled hands remove silver skin, excess fat, and small connective tissues, producing clean, uniform cuts ready for the next stage. After being cut and trimmed, the meat does not leave the line right away. A strict quality inspection begins, where technology speaks louder than human instinct. Each piece passes through sensor scanners and optical cameras, analyzing color, surface moisture, and muscle fiber structure in milliseconds. Even the smallest color irregularities, signs of bruising, or abnormal tissue are detected immediately. At the same time, temperature and metal sensors ensure the meat has been properly chilled and contains no foreign contaminants from processing. Data from every piece is recorded, creating a clear traceability trail from the field to the facility. But technology does not fully replace human judgment. At the end of the line, quality inspectors still observe, touch, and make the final call. Only cuts that pass both checkpoints, machines and human inspection, are approved and cleared for the next stage. Next comes the grinding and mechanical forming stage, where meat is transformed from individual cuts into a uniform raw material. Approved cuts are fed into industrial grinders, where rotating augers and toothed wheels force the meat through steel grinding plates. The pressure is strong but carefully controlled, ensuring even grinding without generating excess heat that could damage the protein structure. During this process, particle size is precisely adjusted depending on the final use, from coarse grind for traditional cooking to finer textures for sausages or export products. This is a critical transformation step, where machine power and technical standards define the final quality. After passing all inspection stages, the meat enters the final and equally critical step: packaging. This process takes place in a tightly controlled environment where temperature and hygiene are strictly maintained. The meat is portioned to standard weights, neatly arranged on conveyor belts, and fed into automated packaging lines. Air is removed from each package and replaced with protective gases, slowing oxidation and extending shelf life without the use of preservatives. Each package is then sealed and labeled with full traceability information, including processing date, storage temperature, batch number, and destination. Cameras continuously inspect seal integrity, catching even the smallest defects. Approved products are transferred to cold storage at around -18 degrees Celsius, preserving quality throughout long-distance transport. From this point on, wild boar meat is no longer a product of the wild, but a fully controlled commodity ready to enter the global supply chain. From an invasive species that devastates agriculture and ecosystems, wild boars have been brought into a tightly controlled system, where science, technology, and field experience work side by side. Traps in the forest, tactical hunts, modern processing lines, and strict quality controls have turned chaos into order, transforming a threat into economic value. This story is not just about meat or exports, but about how humans adapt and rebalance their relationship with nature in a changing world. If you want to keep exploring stories of technology, survival, and hidden systems like this, don't forget to hit like and follow Mandarin Tech.